And why do bees die? Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining me on my live stream tonight. We're going to be talking about why bees die. It's always a frustration when trying to keep bees alive and they die for no reason, apparently. There is a reason, but it's hard to know exactly sometimes why your bees died. It's so good to see all of you here tonight. Great to have you in the chat. Thank you for joining me tonight. Hope your evening is going well. Hope you're having a good week already. And here in Illinois, we've had up and down temperatures. And as soon as it warms up, it gets windy or rains or something. But today the bees were flying really nice, having a good time out there. And I was excited. I was looking at our apple trees, and I have never seen this many bees before on those apple blossoms. That was just incredible. The whole apple trees were just making this huge roaring noise of honeybees on it. So I don't know if that means more apples. Sure seems like it. So maybe wherever you're at tonight, your day was well and you have some good weather as well. And been setting up a new bee yard on the same property. Going to be talking about that a little bit tonight. But I do want to talk about why bees die. A lot of times people will approach me with a picture of a frame of dead bees that are still, in the comb, and they'll say, "Hey, look at this picture. Why did my bees die?" And that's impossible to diagnose. It's just really no way to know. But a lot of people do, get frustrated that they really don't know why bees die. And so I thought it'd be good tonight to talk about it, give some reasons why I personally think bees die. And Sherry and I talked a little bit today about that. And she did some research and found that in her research, according to different studies that talk about how many bees are dying, what percentage of bees die each year, she found that for the most part, it's like a lot less bees are dying now. And that was interesting because it's in 2006, roughly around that period of colony collapse disorder, there were a lot of bees dying. And a lot of people got involved in beekeeping because of colony collapse disorder. That was kind of the silver lining in a storm, I guess, in a storm cloud, is that a lot of people did get involved in beekeeping that had never really thought about it because they were like, oh, we have to save the bees. The news media back in 2006 or 7, they really went all out, full blitz on we're all going to die. The earth is over because bees are dying unless everybody gets a beehive. And literally back then, when we were running our bee business kind of brand new, we had people buying 30, 40 hives. I mean, new beginners just buying everything they could. And I think that's calmed down a little bit. I think people over the years have learned that we're all not going to die. Bees play a vital role in pollination, certainly, but we are able to keep bees going and make new bees every year. And so, yeah, it's a problem, but it seems to be getting better. And Sherry and I thought this hypothesizing a little bit that perhaps when it first hit and so many new beginners came into beekeeping, there weren't as many classes available. There weren't as many, I guess, there wasn't as much information compared to what it is now. I mean, that was 2007, that was a long time ago. And when you think about the plethora of information and classes, I didn't even have online classes back then. In fact, I don't even think I was teaching on-site classes. So, now there's just so much information on bees, so many places, so many clubs, so many places to become educated that maybe more people now are keeping their bees alive through wiser beekeeping skill sets. And of course, I've been on YouTube, 15, 16 years now. And I have been promoting so many of the things now that's finally caught traction in the beekeeping community at large about keeping your bees alive by feeding them in the winter, building up bees of winter physiology in the fall, and feed, Mite Control. Oh, and another thing, way back then, Sherry and I noticed this particular trend too, was that people were very, very uneasy about treating for mites. and most people were new beginners. They didn't want to do anything about mites, not just not treat, but they just didn't want to fool with the whole mite concept. Now you see a big change in that. There's still a lot of people that I totally understand and respect that don't want to do anything about mites. That's your thing. But for the most part, most beekeepers understand that mites are a big problem and that we need to do something. So if we have more people coming over to the side of let's feed our bees, let's keep good nutrition in the hive, and let's keep our mite levels low, it just goes to show that we're going to have less bees dying. And so that's good news. But let's get into it tonight, and then I'll take some questions. But I did want to talk to you guys a little bit about why bees die. And I've kind of broken it down into 3 different categories. I think there are fewer colonies that are dying according to studies compared to, several years ago, but yet many bees are still dying. The 3 categories I think we fall into for reasons are the operator error. That means that we all make mistakes as beekeepers. Hey, I'm not perfect. This is David Burns saying, I've blown it. I've made the mistakes. I've lost some colonies before because I just didn't do something that I knew I should have done, or I didn't want to do it. I didn't have time to treat for mites. I didn't have time to take care of that issue. It happens, right? You just can't be on the ball all the time. Sometimes I thought maybe this would be okay not to do that, and it was not a good thing. So operator error, and then pests and diseases have been with us since the beginning of time. We have a lot of different pests today. Certainly Varroa destructor is probably our poster child of the pests that we worry about, but certainly there are others we'll talk about. And diseases. Leave a comment if you've had to struggle with some diseases we'll talk about. And the last thing is a hot topic that can create a blowing up of the comment section, because we're going to talk about environmental threats. That would be things like pesticides, insecticides, loss of floral sources, and so on. So let's talk about that tonight. Let's get right into it. First, let's talk about operator error. Beekeepers can easily make some fatal mistakes in beekeeping. I just published a video this afternoon, and I went into some hives. And I went into one particular hive, guys, and they've been in the process. I made a split and left them to raise their own queen. Made a video a couple of weeks ago where they got a queen cell started. Turns out that they raised several queen cups. If you haven't watched that video, maybe I shouldn't give you the ending, but check that video out that came out today. But it's a good video to show you, what are you going to do if maybe your queen is still in a queen cell developing? If you go in and disturb the frames, here's what can happen sometimes, and it is an operator error. The cell, this is going to be good. I'm excited. I'm pumped. I'm on fire. So when queens make, what bees make, they raise a new queen. What they first do is they take a worker cell and they have a larvae, like a 1-day-old larva there. And so instead of feeding it a mixture of worker jelly at day 3, they continue to feed it royal jelly, but it's coming out horizontally out of the comb, just like a worker cell does. But they pull it out like this a little further. Now, when you first see that, you can be fooled to think that's a drone cell, because it does look kind of raised up and bigger. You can see the larvae. They keep floating more royal jelly, pushing the larva to the top of that, what would be the start of a cup, but it's horizontal. And so if you catch it, first few days, you'll see it just coming horizontally out. They have to get away from the comb because now they're going to turn it and go down vertically with that queen cell, that queen cup, and then it becomes a queen cell. So at first, when you see it, you may not recognize it, but once it turns and it gets into a full-fledged queen cell, about the size of my pinky here, that's sticking down, perpendicular to the frame. What happens sometimes when they build it, they can utilize the comb of both frames for support. They don't always do this, but it's happened. And so when you go to separate your frames, you can actually like pull this and crack open that queen cell that's completely sealed off, thus killing your only queen that they were banking on. So that's operator error. In that video today, I showed you guys how to be careful. And we actually found the queen cell, the cell. And then I walked you through, wow, look at that. Here's what we have to do. And so a lot of beekeepers will actually destroy queen cells by pulling frames straight up, and then you're dragging that queen cell. That's, remember, it's extra. It's hanging out further than the comb. Remember that. So that's an example of how beekeepers can make frame handling mistakes. I'll also show you in that video where when you spot your queen and you celebrate, you found the queen, oh, it's got a red dot. Red is this year's color. Then you have to keep eyes on your queen when you put that frame back. And when you put the next frame next to it, you have to be careful not to smash her, because she can go onto the wood, the ears of the frame, or the frame rest area when you put your frame back, and you can smash her. It's so easy to do that. But some other, besides, handling problems of killing the queen by being a little too rough, sometimes you wear big gloves, and these gloves are you lose your dexterity of your fingers when you're working those frames. And sometimes you can actually kill the queen with your own fingers by squishing her. But besides that, there are other reasons operator error comes into play. One of them is the failure to feed. And I think sometimes we feel like they're bugs, they're bees. We don't feed spiders and ants. They do okay. And so we think, well, why do I need to feed my bees? But bees do a lot better when they have proper nutrition. That's all it is to it. A lot of times, the reason bees need to be fed is because we have them at places where there isn't an abundance of floral sources. Now, I live in Illinois, and fortunately where I live about half mile away from a large river bottom. So there's not a lot of farmland there because, there's trees, forests, and rolling hills that are too difficult to make into farm fields. So my bees love that. I'm also located near about 3 miles away from one city where they find a lot of clover and a lot of sources. I'm also located about maybe another 5 miles from another city that they could go to. I have seen them go there. I tracked them one time by tracing down their waggle dance. But these lack of floral sources in our area, if you live in Illinois where you don't have a river like I do, you could just have nothing but corn and beans, and that's not going to cut it. And so bees are pretty desperate at times when some of the common things just go away, like yard clover, Dutch white clover in your yards. And when that's gone, bees don't have much. So we do need to supplement. We need to give bees good nutrition. It really makes them much more healthier, helps them to fight off a lot of different viruses, the better nutrition that they have. Poor inspections, that just means that a lot of times beekeepers get into beekeeping, and operator error means that we inspect colonies sometimes and we don't know what we're looking for as a new beginner. We don't see that. We don't realize, oh, there's beetles everywhere. We don't realize that we have mites because they're tiny. You can't see them unless you kind of do an alcohol or a Dawn soap wash or something. And so sometimes you go into a hive to inspect it and you miss some of the problems that an experienced beekeeper may see. So sometimes without having a proper inspection, things can get by you and us, and we can just fail to understand it. I've got an inspection guide that's available on my website, about 11 pages, downloadable PDF file. And that is a great inspection guide to help you go in with a purpose. I wrote an article for for Bee Culture. I had the wrong magazine, but it just came out in May, or it's coming out, I think. And in that article, I write about this, how to do a proper inspection. And it's really important that we learn those inspection skills so that we don't have operator error. And then the other thing is solving these threats that we might identify that are up on our colony. So what is our colony being threatened by? Is it being threatened by pests and diseases? Is it being threatened by a lack of floral sources, small hive beetle, mice, bears? What is it that it's being threatened by? then we as a beekeeper, we have to be savvy enough to know what's the solution. How do I protect my hive from this threat? And it could be something that just depends on us coming alongside of our bees and making sure that they can survive this threat. And then the other thing is operator error is lacking the management skills. It is a lot to learn to manage bees. I talked today to a bee team 6 member of my mentorship program, and he was telling me about how difficult it is once you start trying to understand bees, the queens, the queen error in queens. And I've said this before that probably more than mites being a problem with our bees having issues is the queen. If we're not really good at watching our queen, watching her brood pattern, making sure she's laying 2,000 eggs a day in the heat of the season, then we may have a problem that will show up later in the summer, fall, or winter if our queen's not doing well. So managing our queen and watching her and watching the eggs and counting the eggs and knowing what kind of numbers I have is critical of management skills. So that takes years. I estimate it takes about 5 years to get a lot of good management skills under our belt. Well, we all know most of these pests and diseases. These are just a handful of hundreds that bees face. But the varroa mite takes the top of the list because it does spread these viruses and that's what shortens the life of a honeybee, which is short already, 35 days in the summer. And now we're cutting it down to 17, 20 days. Same in the winter, where you might have bees live 4 to 6 months. Now they're going to live approximately only 2 to 3 months. And so they're going to freeze out by lack of numbers because varroa mite has spread viruses. So we need to control our mites. I have a lot of videos about that. Small hive beetle, especially for those living in more of their native climate, such as Africa. But if you live in a climate that's very tropical, sandy soil, very humid, hot temperatures, small hive beetle is a battle. So if you live in the South, you have small hive beetle. If you live out west and it's more arid and it's more dry, not so much beetle problem. But we have beetle issues in Illinois, and I've had my share of them. But again, they are very manageable here in Illinois. But you do have to keep oil traps between frames to control those beetles. Keep your hives in as much sun as you can. Don't put them in a shady spot that has nothing but the proper ground cover for beetles to grow, like dead leaves and wood and all that. So you got to kind of think through that. A lot of people underestimate the power of robber bees. Now, this is something we see after a dearth has started. So this is going to be late summer. For me, it's going to be anytime after the end of July into August when my white Dutch clover kind of dries up. And then all at once, we're going to have the start of this robbing. These large colonies want to bulk up for winter, and they're going to go to smaller, weaker colonies and still fight them and kill them and steal their honey. And it can happen in a matter of moments. There's very little you can do to stop it once it starts. The thing to do here is get ahead of it. Please prevent robbing from happening by having robber screens on your hive in the late summer before the dearth even hits. So it's a delicate balance, but you can see you can kind of know, you have to be a botanist almost, but you have to know your area, the plants, and kind of when they're going to stop producing a lot of nectar. Watch them, kind of talk to other beekeepers and say, okay, our nectar flow is kind of ending. That's when you want to get robber screens on there. And what the robber screen does, it allows your bees to figure out how to go in and out of the hive about 3 to 6 inches away from the opening. And then it's a screen type opening down by the larger opening, but it's screened off. Robber bees smell the pheromones of the hive and want to go in through the screen, and they can't. Your bees know the secret door. We also have those available on our website, but just get out ahead of that. Now, let's talk about diseases too, because that's really a bummer to get a disease in your colony. American foul brood and European foul brood, both brood bacteria diseases that are very contagious, so contagious that, especially American foul brood, so deadly, so contagious that it is governed by most apiarist inspectors that the hive has to be destroyed if it's found in your hives. It's so easily for this to be spread from hive to hive. And I have never had American foul brood in all my years of beekeeping. I've been beekeeping since, I believe, 1995. And I've never, ever had American foul brood. I've had things that look like it, didn't smell like it, but I saw perforated, brood. But I did all the tests on it, and it wasn't American foul brood. I have had one year, maybe 10, 12 years ago, I did have a few hives that had European foul brood, but I was able to clean that up. And so, you have to be concerned about these things of American foul brood, European foul brood. European foul brood is something you do see in the spring, this time of the year, if it's real wet outside. And what happens is you'll look at your larvae down in your cells of a brood frame. They'll be transparent. You can see their spherical breathing tubes. They'll be twisted in the cells. They'll be discolored. They should be pearly white, but now they're maybe transparent, or they're dull looking, gray looking, black looking, and some of them stand up in the cell. So if you see that, if your larvae aren't sitting on the base of their cells in pearly white royal jelly glistening, then that could be European foul brood that now has to be treated by a vet. So we're not allowed as beekeepers to administer any antibiotics anymore. Used to till a few years ago. Now you got to call a vet. They have to come out. You have to find a vet that knows bees, and they have to make a prescription of the antibiotic. So be aware of that as also. Environmental threats is the last one I want to talk about. And certainly that's pesticides and insecticides. All of us are scared to death. We understand that, there are some methods that we have to administer to control various pesticide or various pests and insects around buildings and on crops even. That's something that has to happen. None of us like it. I don't think anything with the word side on the end of it means death. So pesticides, the death of pests. Insecticide means the death of insects. So none of us like the idea of that. I don't want it on my food, but I want my food. I don't want my food not to be available, because without pesticides or insecticides, I could have my own garden, but when I go out of town on a trip, it's hard for me to pack enough food from my garden to last me a week on the road. So I'm just saying that it's kind of a good thing and a bad thing, but none of us want that. We don't want our bees in it. That's a problem. People will go out and spray 7 or something all around, different kind of gardens or fruit trees or something. Our bees are there getting nectar. They get into it. They bring it back to the hive. It can kill our hives. We have all heard of neonicotinoids, chemicals that farmers use, seed coatings that's being blown out of planters when they clear the lines, and our bees can pick that up and be harmful to our bees as well. This is a real threat. It's real. We see crop dusters. We know that it's out there. All of us are scared to death. We don't like it. You talk to beekeepers in Illinois, and most of them will say, yeah, everybody tells us that all of this insecticide and pesticide stuff they're spraying, they're following the label, they're doing things safely, it's of no threat to bees. But then they say, it is. So, it's out there, and you're always going to be concerned about that. So due diligence. I have a good relationship with my farmer, and we know exactly what to do to help my bees from being affected anytime he does have to use anything like this. And so people ask me sometimes, like Roundup, herbicides, does that affect bees? Absolutely. Here's how. It's killing their food source. It's killing the weeds. It's killing the things that bees go to gather nectar. So if you reduce their nectar source with Roundup and other things that are killing these weeds, bees just don't have food. So even that is a problem as well. Lack of floral resources. We need to have our bees in a place where there's abundance of various kinds of pollen and nectar sources, and that makes things a whole lot better. So I just wanted to jump in there today and give some ideas why I think bees are dying. And that's a perspective that's kind of broad, but I do think that we have to think about these 3 levels of issues that we have today. One of the things that we can certainly, it's not a lot we can do about pests and or pesticides and insecticides or floral sources. We can't go out there and all of us, I can't go out there and plant 100 acres of clover. I can't. I don't have that kind of land. But something I can do is myself. I can be a better operator. Okay. I can have less operator error. Thank you, Austin Payne, for the $10 donation. Found around 30 bees outside my hive crawling on the ground with their tongues sticking out dead and dying. The bees that come home with pesticides, will they store the pollen, nectar, and poison? Oftentimes, Austin, it's kind of a go-to response when we see bees coming back with their tongues sticking out, their proboscis like that. We do jump to the conclusion that they might be dying from something like a pesticide. And the thing about a pesticide, there are some pesticides that bees will pick up and they will bring back to the colony. It doesn't kill them immediately. It may be in the form of a powder that they put in their pollen baskets. They bring it back to the colony and then they disperse it all throughout the colony as a food source. And so it's sublethal. It's going to kill bees over time. Then there's other pesticides that bees can get into, like liquid sprays and all that. Bees could get into that, and it could kill foragers before they even get back to the hive, which is a bad thing, but the best of the bad thing because the bees aren't going to bring it back. Can you spray pesticides around your home and not affect the bees? Let me just say, it's like it's like asking a doctor, if I take this medicine, are there any side effects? Of course there is. It's going to be different than drinking water. So yes, it can affect. I don't think there's any pesticides that we can say I can spray and it won't affect my bees. The potential is there. Again, use your best judgment and try to cut down on things that get airborne or that your bees will track into. Like if you are spraying dandelions, bees are going to be on the dandelions. They're going to get into it. So if you spray right up against your house for ants and it's a liquid spray or something like that, then bees aren't up around your house. They're not going to be around the base of your foundation, and it's not an airborne spray. For small hive beetle, is oil traps or peppermint patties better? A lot of us aren't crazy about this, the idea of peppermint in the hive, because we're not sure. Bees live off the odors of so many different pheromones, and they talk through pheromones. So if you and I talk right now by voices, and all at once there's a big, loud peppermint voice that's drowning me out, you might not like this live stream. What happened to the live stream, David? I could hear you. Then I heard this loud other person talking, and I couldn't understand what they were saying. We wonder if that strong peppermint odor in the hive is messing up their communication of all the pheromones that tell them what to do and when to do it. I know people swear by it. I know people will stake their life on it, but there's a better way to do it without disrupting pheromone with the odor, and that's oil traps. I highly recommend Beetle Blaster disposable traps. You can put vegetable oil in, only about 1/4 inch on the bottom, and the bees will run those down in there, and you can capture those small hive beetle. Bandit says, how can you treat for fire ants without harming bees? Have more mounds this year here in North Carolina. Wow. If those of you up north do not understand what fire ants are, you would not believe the power, the sheer force, the aggressiveness of fire ants it's just outstanding. It's unbelievable. You can put your legs of your hive stand in, let's see, a couple mounds within 30 feet of the hives. Yeah, you can put your legs of your hive stand in a can of water or oil, like vegetable oil, and the fire ants won't cross that moat. That's what you're trying to do. You've got to be careful that fire ants don't have a limb touching the hive. You've got to break their pheromone tracking system of walking into that hive. You have to make a barrier. That's flat out it. You kill one mound, there's another mound that's going to pop up. So make a barrier. All of you, even if you don't have fire ants, you have sugar ants. Got to find a way to make barriers for the ants that they can't make access to that hive. Simple put. I noticed on one of the hives that I bought, they make an ant footing, an ant protective footing that you put some oil in. So that's good. Pennsylvania beekeeper Darren, David, could you comment on how your master beekeeper certification has made you a better beekeeper? Yes, I will comment on that briefly. I could spend all night because I'm so excited. I became a master beekeeper certified in 2010. I was doing it in order to push me beyond my comfort level in bees. All of us have a tendency to, it's just like exercise, if you get started in exercise, you start and your body will like, whoa, I gotta get used to this guy exercising. But then your body gets used to that. And so your 20-minute workout really isn't doing as much anymore for you as it did in the beginning. You're not at a maximum heart rate, your heart rate's beating slower and all that. You have to increase your workout time to get better fitness. Same with beekeeping. I was stuck in a concept of, this is all I want to know about bees. That I know enough. I don't want to know any more. I don't want to put the time in. But then I thought, I want to start teaching classes. I need to know more. So what could help me get to a place where I could spend more time and know more about bees? And I thought, if I study to be a master beekeeper, I'll get more into the science of beekeeping, and I'll start studying things that typically I don't really care about. You know what I mean? Like, here's an example. I don't have bears in Illinois. We don't have to put bear fences up. I don't have to worry about bears. But as a master beekeeper, guess what? I had to learn everything about not letting bears attack hives. So ordinarily in Illinois, as a beekeeper, I would never even think about that. I don't want to know. I don't care. I don't have bears, right? Now I got to know 0.7 joules. The wire has to be 5 inches off the ground, how many wires you need, battery backup on the bear fence and all that, right? So I like that. I like that it brought me to a place where, in order to pass the test, I had to know everything about beekeeping. I had to know everything about bees. They can test on anything about bees. And so that's what it made me a better beekeeper. It pushed me outside of things that I would probably just want to get stuck on as a hobby horse, my interest. But I had to learn things that I wasn't interested in because other people are going to ask me that question. So I hope that answers your question. I would encourage any of you to seek out being a certified master beekeeper, not for bragging rights. I don't know everything. A lot of people better beekeepers than me that aren't certified, but I think it's just an individual thing that helped me grow, and it might help you too. Brian Bennett, hello. Good to see you again. I have your Burns feeder on my hive, and they're not drinking as much as I thought they would. Is this because of cool nights? Plus, there's a lot of pollen out there. Thanks. Pollen out there, Brian, means that there's probably nectar out there. So given a choice between your sugar water and real nectar, is a choice. It's a difference between eating a steak at a nice steakhouse in the right environment, or an old steak somewhere at a place that doesn't care about making it taste good or be tender. You can go to some restaurants and you just know, you don't order a steak at this place, it's not going to be good, right? Bees are like that. They want the good stuff. Thank you, Rusty, for that $4.99. Rusty says, I understand when a swarm happens, the bees leave together and find a new home. When a hive is robbed, so do they do the same thing, or do they scatter? That's a good question, Rusty. Thanks for your donation, by the way. I appreciate the $5. So when a hive swarms, it takes them about 30 days to plan this swarm. A lot of people think it happens overnight, but about 30 days. So they start, April the 1st, they start saying, okay, we need to swarm. Then it'll swarm till April 30th. Lots to do before they initiate and leave the hive. But half of them leave with the old queen, and the other half stays behind and raises a new queen. A virgin queen goes out, mates, becomes mama. Now, as far as robbers, what happens is this colony is kind of small. That's why they're being robbed out. The robbers are pushing their way through the guard bees and smashing their way and fighting and killing and stinging each other. Bees can sting each other and not lose their stinger. And they just fight and fight until they take possession of the honey. What happens sometimes, I've heard, and who knows, that a lot of these bees kind of just say, hey, okay, we give up. Can we come back and live at your hive? It seemed like after a while you look and they've been robbed, and even the bees are gone. Even the queen's gone. Where'd they go? Kind of think they went back with this, the robbers kind of talked him into follow us back. We're taking your honey. We'll be there. Ricky, thanks for the $10. Man, I appreciate you guys leaving donations. That means a lot to me. I really do. I appreciate that a lot. David, if I make a large quantity of sugar water, how long will it last at room temperature before it spoils? That is a good question. That depends on the temperature of the room. Room temperature probably means 70 degrees Fahrenheit, but it depends on the amount of yeast that is floating in the air. It depends on the purity of the water, the purity of the sugar. All of those things play a big role in it. I don't like making my sugar water very early. Like I don't want to make a whole bunch at once. I make it, if I'm putting sugar water out today, I'm making it today. I don't make it ahead of time. I used to make a lot of it ahead of time, and I never had it spoiled. I often put Honey Be Healthy in there. I think stuff like that helps it to last longer. I've put it in the refrigerator. That keeps it from spoiling so quick. Or you can even freeze it if you have 2 to 1, I think. Maybe 1 to 1 if you leave some space or something. So don't try to risk it because you don't want to lose it, especially if you're adding additives to it. It can spoil more quickly because some of these additives are proteins. You get protein, carbohydrates, like a piece of bread. After a while, you're going to get some mold on that bread. So be careful. Hey, Jason, thanks for the $5. I appreciate your donation. If I want honey this year and my colonies are not that big, can I just keep adding bees to one hive to ensure a crop, or just cross my fingers? Yeah, well, the truth is you're right on there, Jason. It's going to take bees. It's going to take a foraging team. Let's just be honest. It's going to take a lot of foragers, right? The bees don't bring a ton of honey back individually, but by sheer numbers and multiple trips to flower after flower throughout the day, all those foragers are bringing back totally a lot of honey after a while. So just be cognitive that you need a lot of bees to make a lot of honey. Thank you, Brian Bennett, for that $10 donation. I appreciate that. So you need a big workforce. That's why I tell you guys, go out there late winter and start feeding your bees 1-to-1 sugar water. I did some experiments this year on some hives, and I did not feed the 1-to-1 sugar water. They had very little brood. The ones I fed 1-to-1 sugar water 42 days before the maple trees pop, they had tons of brood, ready for when the nectar flow starts. So it's all about numbers. Yeah. I would suggest that if you start adding bees from other hives to one big hive, you're going to weaken all your other hives. So you're just going to plan further ahead next time. Maybe let things grow as much as they can this year. Next year, try to bump up your hives so they're ready for the nectar flow when it starts. Backdate it 42 days. Feed them before the first things start to bloom. How do you know? I know it's a guess, but you can get kind of close. Hey, Mark, good to see you. Thanks for your donation, Mark. $20 super sticker. Good to hear from Mark. I appreciate that too. Hi, Carol Livingston. Is it true throwing a wet blanket over a hive while farmers spray can protect the colony? Sounds kind of far-fetched. That is true. Yes, it is true. For example, some aerosol sprays, like paint spray systems, they use water to catch particles. And yeah, if you you've seen things where if you got to walk through a burning house, you dampen a rag and you kind of hold it up to your face, and it's a better filter. Let's put it that way. If it's wet, absolutely, that would be helpful to put something wet. I've heard that too. I've never tested it, but it just makes sense in my mind that it's helpful based on how things are filtered through water more than they are sometimes filtered just through the air. But yeah, you want to be careful not to suffocate your colony because it is going to keep a lot of air out. So be careful to leave something there. That's the problem, if there's airborne pesticides being sprayed, it may get to where your bees are getting air somewhere that they need. Tiny Trail, thanks for the $20 donation. I appreciate that so much. Dave, thanks for hosting the party. Well, you arrived late to the party, but hey, it's still a party. Good to have you here. Oh, you're going to be at EAS, Amherst, Massachusetts. Good. Kevin, wonder what Kevin's last name is. Wonder if I know Kevin and I've seen him at EAS before. Well, good to see you, Kevin. And yeah, I'm looking forward to EAS tremendously. I'm going to be giving 2 talks there, and I'm looking forward to giving those 2 talks. I'm also heading up, I'm the, I forget what my title is, but I'm heading up the field test for all the master beekeeper candidates. So we're designing the test in the field. So that's been a lot of fun. We've about got that ready to go. Hey, Tom. Tom is a good friend way up near Canada almost. And he is getting Canadian type weather. Let's put it that way. Snow finally melted and the bees are on their way. Amazing changes in a week. Thanks for all the great work, David. I appreciate that, Tom. Tom is a cheerleader. Tom is one of those people that knows how just to, he's on B Team 6, so he'll write me a question and he knows just what to say to really cheer me on. Wow. Tom should start a company of cheerleaders, how to encourage people. He would make a lot of money on that company. Hayden Waldron, good to see you. I split one of my hives and they're raising the queens from eggs. There are 2 capped queen cells right next to each other on the same frame. Should I try to split it or what do you suggest? Yeah, so they're raising, boy, that's a good question. I've thought about this over the years. There's always a question of if there's 2 capped queen cells and you've already kind of made a split, could they still have a swarming instinct and take one of those queens that would become a virgin queen and split with her? That's always a possibility, but it's very rare. So what I would do is go with what most bees do. Most of them are going to just take one of those queens after they fight it out, or if the first one emerges, they may kill the other one. So I would just hold course and let them pick which queen they like best of those 2 and just let it go for that. That would be kind of what I would do. I wouldn't get too crazy about that. All right. John Whitmore. I went to check on my new package queen to see if she was out of the cage and discovered she was dead in the cage. Her attendants were dead too. Any suggestions on what to do? I bet those bees were probably shipped to you, maybe died in shipping. Too bad they died. I would like to know, a lot of people have been telling me in the last 2 years about they're getting their queens in their packages. There's no candy in the queen cage. Now, in our packages, we don't have attendants, but we have candy that the queen can eat, and she will. Absolutely. Well, I want to tell you guys that I've been setting up my new apiary yard, and I want to ask Sherry to join me now because I want to talk to Sherry about this new apiary yard that we're working on. Hey, Sherry, how are you tonight?
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Hey, thanks for working behind the scenes, running the show tonight, Sherry. Appreciate it.
It's kind of funny doing that, David. Reading all the different the different things that people are saying and
okay, yeah,
they're talking about. So
it's yeah. I try to read some of the comments, but if I try to read them, then I get distracted. I'm not a multitasker, I guess, and I lose my train of thought. So I have to be careful.
And people are so good about answering each other, and it's like they've been listening to you for years, and they know what David Burns would say.
I know, that's great.
Really nice.
I know. I'm trusting that all you guys will do that on my YouTube videos too. I can't get to all the answers. Some of you guys can answer for me. Okay, don't feel bad if it's a wrong answer. I'll just delete it or something. But try it. You know.
Yeah. So what were you saying about the apiary?
Yeah, Sherry. Sherry and I have a lot of bees, and I have some right here at what we call our training center, and it's convenient for me because it's only like 20 feet away from all my studio equipment and all my bee suits and all my smoker fuel and all my resources. So I can just walk out of the door 5 feet. I'm in a beekeeping studio outdoors. That's kind of a problem. And it has been because we have 13 grandchildren that like to come over and all the bees are there. We have delivery people. We have UPS, FedEx, and they back up into a beehive.
Right there. It's like you chose that spot.
Well, boy, I think bees like it there. I don't know, maybe not. But it's a good wind block.
The bees do like it right there. It's a really nice wind block, and it's warm. It's got that microclimate right there. It's always warmer up next to a house. So You
Yeah.
know, if you live in a place where you can do that, that's really great, but it is right next to the door. So
Yeah. And it's really bad because if we ever drop some sugar or some honey or something, we can't even walk from one building to the next. So anyway, Sherry and
mhm.
I decided let's move them. We've got a nice spot. I've been growing some trees, uh, halfway down the lane there. So
Yeah,
let's put them down there. And so
yeah.
I kind of drug my feet on it all winter, waiting for a better day. Finally got out there and started doing this process. And it's looking good, Sherry. What do you think? Do you think it looks good?
It looks good. It looks good.
I like it.
I spent the whole afternoon trying to figure out how to mow
I know.
around it
I
in
know.
the right way so I'm not knocking anybody down. So that's one thing when people are setting up an apiary that's got more than a couple of hives, you do have to figure out how do I maneuver the lawnmower and
I
what's
know.
it going to be, like this and do that sort of stuff. But
It's
it
gonna
would
be
have
tough.
been easier if you had moved it in the wintertime.
Yeah, it would have been. So yeah, that's right. So mowing is going to be a challenge. I'll have to be down there. I'll have to be down there with the weed eater. One thing about Illinois is we have good grass that grows really fast in the
Mhm,
summer, and it
mhm.
poses a problem around beehives. But
Yeah.
here's the other issue, and I want you guys that are listening today to the live stream to give some feedback here. I've got a lot of colonies that are big that I need to move. And I don't have a fork truck. I don't have a bobcat anymore. I kind of got out of the habit of or the need to move big hives on pallets anymore. So I don't have that kind of equipment anymore. I know you can buy the hand things you lock into the handles. Two guys can pick up a 300-pound hive.
Yeah.
I'm thinking in my mind that's 150 pounds per person. Okay, I don't want to do that.
Okay. Yeah.
Now I got to move these big gigantic hives. I got to deal with the weight of them and how active they are now, and I also have to deal with the idea of they're going to be foraging. So I have to either go out there late at night after they're all back home and block them in, and then move them in the morning before the sun comes up. That's two
Mhm.
things I don't want to do. I don't want to be working
Mhm.
bees at 10 o'clock at night. Did that the other night. And I don't want to get up early I have to get up. My bees to start flying at 4:30. I don't want to get up at 3:30 and work bees. So, so anyway, here's what I'm thinking.
Right.
Here's a poor man's way, or a man that has poor tool resources way of dealing with this, and that is
We're
I'm going
cheap.
to go out there. Yeah, cheap. I'm going to go out there. I'm a single person, one man show here, and I'm going to. All right. So let's say I have. I don't want you to lift these things, Sherry. That'd be terrible.
No, I can
Let's
do
say,
it.
let's say I have two deeps and a super. So most of my hives are there now. So I'm going to take the super off in the middle of the day and the first deep off, put that deep on a bottom board, put the super on that deep and a top cover. Now I've got a bottom board,
Mhm.
deep, and a super. And I can pick that up and I can put it on the truck or trailer. And then I'll back left is only my bottom board and a deep. I can put a top cover on. I've just kind of split the hive and made it lighter that I can manage it. I'm going to take it all down there, set it up the way it was before I did
Mhm.
this, and then I'm going to put something in front of the hive in broad daylight that the foragers will reorientate. And I'm going to put another empty box where they used to live with a couple of frames there to gather any foragers that were out there. And they're going to get on those. I've done this before successfully. Those foragers will just get on the comb and realize that's not their hive. They won't go out again. So I can just take those frames and shake them back up there and they'll reorientate.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. But tell people why you have to put something in front to reorientate them.
It's worked really good. I'll tell you what worked so well this year, I parked the golf cart right within inches of the opening. Thank you, Black Dog Apiary Farm, $40 donation. It's good to hear from you. Thank you so much. If I park that golf
You
cart
do
right in
that.
front of the hive, then they'll take a reorientation flight because they go to fly out and they realize, wait, something's not the same. And then they reorientate. It's worked every single time this year.
Or
So the
they'll go back. They'll go back to where the hive originally was.
if we didn't put something there.
You didn't put
Yeah,
something there, they would just go back. And so people make that mistake a lot of times.
they do.
That they think they can just pick up a hive and just,
Yeah.
trot it to the backyard or something like that. And you can't do it like that.
Yeah. Yeah. People don't realize that if you move a hive, more than 6, 8 feet from its location, the bees hardly can ever find it again. They just don't know where it's at. Now we can look around and find something, but they use a different type of location navigation. And once they know it so well that if you move it, they're confused.
Mm,
So
right.
anyway, that's what I'm going to be working with the
Yeah.
next few days,
Yeah.
trying to move those hives around.
Well, here's another question for you. So somebody asked me this the other day, with brand new packages, you're going to set out your hive. How close can you put brand new brand new package hives together? And then in your scenario, they're years and years old. How close can I put them then if I were to move that yard?
Okay, both of those scenarios have the same problem. Both of those scenarios are asking bees to take a new orientation flight. That's a problem. So even if I had a new package and I put two packages really close together, both of those packages are going to take an orientation flight. And so you could have the potential of them all saying hive number A, letter A, is home, and they all go there and they desert this other box. So
Right.
when you're installing packages, you need to separate them for a little bit of time or face in directions. What are you going to do when you install two? Yeah, when you
But the hive, the entrance in a different, don't put the entrances all lined up.
correct.
So
Like if you have two packages,
the other way.
yeah, two packages, one could face north, one could face south.
Okay.
After they get orientated, you can rotate like this one 3 or 4 inches a day until they both face the same way.
Oh,
That's
really?
yeah.
I had no idea you could do that.
Yeah, you can move a hive 3 to 6 inches daily or every 3 or 4 hours, and they'll slowly reorientate. But if you move them more than a few feet, they're lost.
There you go. Wow.
Hey, thank you, Thomas. Our club president bought a queen cage that holds an entire deep green drone comb. He said to let the drones emerge and then use the drone trap for mite tests. Your thoughts? Wow, Tom. Yeah, I know all about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's
This
Dr.
week, I think.
Lamas that did that study. And he made an observation that we've all known that mites love to go onto the green drone comb or onto drones because they have a longer gestation period. They can raise more families have more sons and daughters. We've always known that. That's why I've always said for years upon years, use green drone comb for IPM mite control. But the different twist is that he discovered that mites really like going to very young adult drones that are very young. They have more maybe plump fat bodies. They have more resources. They can attack those drones and get nutrition from the young drones. And he's talking about, and I have several of these. In fact, we have used these for years in research. They look like a frame, but they're made out of queen excluder material. And so you put a frame in there and you can hold your queen in this cage that surrounds an entire frame. Pretty common to see these in university studies and all this. But anyway, I have a bunch of those and I'm going to conduct this study myself. My thoughts on it, I think it's a really good idea. It makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of things to think about to wrap your mind around it. Right now, we have data points to do an alcohol or a dawn wash, and we can actually use 300 bees, count the mites. We have a protocol of how many mites per 100 bees equals an infestation level that has been established and proven. This other method of if you don't want to kill the drones, you have to CO2 them, anesthetize them with CO2. That is a whole thing you have to figure out how to do. And then you have to kind of pick these drones up and look for mites on them. That is painstakingly labor intense. That's an issue for me. That's an issue for me. But yeah, it's a way to do it without killing your drones, I guess. But the other side of that is you could just simply kill all the drones that have emerged, and you've had a period of time where they gathered all the mites were attracted to these young age drones, and then you could actually just kill. They can't get through queen excluder material either. make sure your queen's out of there, but you could just destroy all the drones, freeze it, for example, and it would kill the drones and all the mites that are there. And you wouldn't have to use chemicals. So there's a lot of different angles. And if you don't want to kill your drones, my question is, what is the data points that we use to say this is an infestation level? Like I saw 6,000 mites in the Tupperware container. Is 6,000 an infestation? Because they're more attracted. They're more attracted to drones than they are workers that we usually take off for alcohol washes.
Right.
So what's the data? I don't know what numbers to pull.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, that'd be interesting. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I'm gonna study that. So I'm gonna use points of references. Like I'm gonna take the same bees that I think have the same, like I'll say, okay, I got, let's say I got 6 mites for 300 bees. Then I'm going to do the green drone comb queen cage trapping and get numbers and see if those numbers are close or what the differences are that I have to use. So it'd be a little bit of work.
Hey, this week, David, though, I got a question. Somebody said, is it 1 green drone comb per box, or how many drone combs can you actually put in a hive? Right? What's a good idea? And I said, well, gosh, you could put, you could use as many as you wanted, but then you're going to lose, your brood and your honey and your pollen and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's a good question.
Hear from the expert, how many drone combs should I put in a hive?
Well, keep in mind that a green drone comb that's a deep frame, a deep green drone comb, has 7,000 cells, about 3,500 cells on each side. So you're right, Sherry. If you start using 2 or 3 per deep box, think of the numbers of potential either honey or brood you're giving up. 21,000 with 3 of them, right? So you're going to have to start thinking. I think the maximum that you want to do is 1 per deep hive box. If you use all mediums, they make them in medium. You can use 1 per medium box. But in the brood nest area is where they go. And if you're going to use just 1, I think I want you to use it in the top deep, because that way you only have to you'd only have to take your super off to get to it. If you put it in the bottom deep, you got to.
You're right. You're so smart.
No, I'm just finding a way to not continue to break my back. That's all. Why don't I put this in the top of the deep, so I don't have to go down to the bottom deep? You
always learn the wrong thing, and then you're able to tell.
That's true. But getting back to your question, though, it is much more effective to have 1 in each brood box. Much more effective. You're going to capture twice as many. That's right.
But the most important thing that people need to remember is you got to keep your eye on that thing. You do not want things start hatching in there.
Now this is good because I'll just confess, I'll put green drone combs in there and I will forget. Forget. And then you're just making mites, right? So you've got to
it's just a mite in.
You got to set a timer, got to put it on your calendar. You got to say, remind me on this date to take it out after 2.5, 3 weeks, and it's capped over. I got to take it out. So if you're not disciplined enough to remember to take it out, don't put it in. It's not worth it.
Hey, and somebody said earlier they had a bunch of chickens. Chickens like to eat those. You need to freeze it, to kill the mites. You don't want to just throw it in the yard, because then you just have mites everywhere.
Yeah,
but then the chickens love to pick through that. So there you go.
So one year, that chickens love that all that drone pupa. So one year I froze a bunch of green drone comb, and I put them back in the hive for the bees to clean out all the dead drones. Yeah, and they're very hygienic. My bees were very hygienic that year, and they just drug out all this dead pupae on the bottom board, right? Yeah. Guess who shows up to do a bee inspection? My bee inspector. And it looked like a war zone. I mean, I got dead bees on my bottom board. There are dead bees on the ground in front of the hive. I just went out there and said, hey, Danny, I used some green drone comb. I put it back in. They're cleaning them out. And I wanted you to know it wasn't a bad disease or something. He's like, oh, no, I figured.
Exactly.
So, it does look bad, though.
Exactly.
Wow. Yep. So thanks, Sherry, for your recommendation to go out there and kind of set up a new apiary. I'm looking forward to doing videos. My problem in my old
don't know if it is.
apiary is they were too close together. I didn't have room to stand or put cameras around my hives, and it was a bit crowded. I got some out there now that are almost too close to some trees.
Yeah.
To work around that.
Yeah. But what's really, really fun is all the different kinds of hives that
That's true.
You've had different hives. I mean, we've had different hives for years, but now you've got, quite an assortment. And I'm looking forward to seeing how they all are going to be this summer when you get in there and show us, how they're progressing. If there's anyone that comes out, in head of the rest of them. So.
Oh, yeah. You're right. I have a flow hive. I have an Apiary hive. I've got the little circle hive. I've got a horizontal hive coming, and I've got another hive. I forgot the name of it. I don't know the proper name, but it's a unique hive, and I'm going to use it as well. I've already got bees in it, so I'll have to look up the name again. But yeah, some good stuff. Some good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we've passed 8 o'clock, Sherry. Time went fast. Wow. I'm sure you guys had a lot of questions. Maybe we didn't have time to get to, but let me just encourage you to always join us on Thursday night at 7 p.m. Central Time. A lot of you on Eastern Time, and you miss it or something. But just remember, I live out west here in Illinois. Sometimes people say I live out west when they live out east, I guess. But we'd love to have you guys drop in and talk with us. Remember, I do have online courses that you can always get caught up on my teachings, and I have a mentorship program as well that you can join B Team 6, where you can ask me questions. Had a lot of B Team 6 questions today, Sherry, and that's fun helping people. I learn a lot by people showing me pictures. They show me scenarios they're in, so it's a hoot. So that's good. So yeah, thank you, everybody. Thanks, Josh. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm so glad. Just remember, bees are going to die. They do have, an expiration date like all of us. They're not going to live forever, but we're going to do our part while we're here to help our bees stay healthy. We're going to do our part, and I hope you can do your part as well. From what I share with you tonight, just try to keep an eye on your bees, keep them healthy, and that means everything. So we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for joining us.
See ya.
Bye.